campus is. And it's especially fun to see the focus on space. This may not be, it may be counterintuitive to some, but it shouldn't be, because space has become the territory that Arizona excels at. And I have to just tell you that I just received, thank you, Colonel, I just received the updated Space Force insignia. So I'm especially delighted. It won't stick, I don't know, but I'm going to cherish and treasure that. You're in for a treat to hear from the Colonel for later this afternoon about what's going on inside the Space Force. My mission is more historical. I've been asked to give you some historical context about where we are in space and how that might relate to Arizona. So I'm especially delighted to have a chance to talk. I know that I'm in the company of a lot of extraordinary experts, but experts in quite diverse fields, but all interested and relevant to space. So I want to thank Yuma for the economic development team that is hosting today's lunch, and to the ASU team, and Lindy, all of the work that has been done in your and Mina's leadership. Thank you so very much for putting all of this together. I suspect that this is the beginning of a lot of great things that will be coming out of ASU, as is so often the case when it's a topic that President Crow has an interest in. Good things may happen. It's bound to happen. So I thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with people from the public, private, and academics sectors who are all interested, we're all united in an interest in growing Arizona's leadership in the domain of space. I know you've enjoyed this kind of discussion for Arizona. Congratulations for the previous sessions. I know you've talked about manufacturing, information and communications, space as an industry, and of course the future of space here in our state. As you settle in from lunch, I want to just open the aperture a little bit and do as requested. I will be talking a bit about the historical context of our work in space. As discussed this morning, space is already playing a sizable role in our economy, and history tells us we should expect nothing less. It just might be an axiom that commerce goes where transportation is available. That has been the case throughout human history. When the camel caravans were traversing the deserts of the earth, trading outposts were established where those routes were. When rivers constituted our interior highways, hubs of commerce populated the rivers, and especially at the confluences throughout interior America. Ocean ports at the bays or river mouths spawned and served continental and intercontinental trade. So too, railroads in the West gave rise to railroad towns, including especially here in Arizona. When I served on the Civil Aeronautics Board, I saw up close how air travel to a new location could transform that economy. It's often been said that Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia were about the same size community when Atlanta invested in a big airport and Birmingham didn't. And you can see the trajectory of the economies in those respective sites. Well, the relevance is that the domain of space, that is the concept that follows with this same profile, that we would anticipate that now, as transportation is available in space, commerce is sure to follow and has been following. Commerce certainly accelerates with space as both a domain, not only for human travel, but with vastly greater frequency for the information and data that power today's economy. Space powers the economy not just occasionally or intermittently, but everywhere and all the time. By the time most Americans have their first cup of coffee in the morning, they have used space, and usually they don't know it. When we check the weather or the stocks, when we check the news or turn on the lights or run the water, we almost certainly are using space. But most Americans are oblivious to the role that space plays in those daily routines. When we use the ubiquitous blue dot on our handheld, we're using space. But without wires, without power lines, without return addresses, most people miss that they're using space assets. That has a significant impact when it comes to congressional support for topics like space. There isn't as much of a constituency for space as there should be, because people simply don't realize that they are using space every day. Apocryphal, I hope it is, but it was once said that a member of Congress said, why are we spending all this money on space assets and satellites and things and launches and all that expensive stuff? I can get the same information from my laptop on my computer, or my computer. So even in some of the highest places, an understanding of space is lacking. And it really falls to those of you, those of us who are attentive to the space topic, to help people understand that the things they're using every day are really dependent upon space. You understand it well, but the important thing is for us to relay that to people in the public so that we have a better comprehension in the halls of Washington. Space is essential to business today, and while NASA may be the most publicly recognized face of space, NASA certainly has nothing close to a monopoly on the space innovation. Today, it's estimated that the United States has over 6,000 space-focused companies. It may be no surprise that we have many more than other countries, but we have more than all other countries rolled up into one. It's us in first place, China is in fifth place, and when you think about what are they calling a company, it might not be carrying the characteristics that we'd identify as a company. China identifies 288 companies, space-related companies, but those I would anticipate have a lot of government involvement. Russia has fewer than 50 companies that they identify as space-related companies. It's been reported that the space sector is on its way to $1 trillion in value. And from that $1 trillion mark, I believe it will only continue to scale. This means that those countries, those cities, and of course, indeed, those states like Arizona that lead in space will be rewarded. And those not engaged, well, they will miss the caravan or the riverboat or the ocean liner or the railroad or the plane. Fortunately for us, Arizona has been engaged in space from the beginning, and we should aspire to join the leaders in space and in space advancement going forward. And this summit may be the way to mark that path. We take pride in knowing that every American astronaut who walked on the moon trained at Meteor Crater. Arizona has our own natural craters, both volcanic and cinder cones, with the cinder cones, but also meteor craters. But in the 1960s, the United States USGS helped nature along when they blasted hundreds of craters into the volcanic lava and cinder fields near Flagstaff to form the Cinder Lake crater fields that imitate the lunar surface. Astronauts studied moon mapping at Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff. So central was Flagstaff to the Apollo missions that a crater on the moon was named in its honor. Lowell Observatory is also famous as the site from which Pluto was discovered and where famous astronomer Vera Rubin pioneered discoveries in dark matter. We are proud that Vera Rubin's name now graces the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, previously known as the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope, currently under construction in Chile. At the University of Arizona, big things are happening for space. The Karas Mirror Lab is famously baking, cooling, and polishing those honeycomb glass mirrors that we used in the most capable of earthbound telescopes to be constructed in Chile, the giant Magellan telescope at Las Campanas. On the education side, astronaut Sally Ride focused her Sally Ride Science Festivals here at ASU, more than any other university in the country. She and other NASA astronauts that she recruited would annually come to campus, where she enticed thousands of middle school girls to come, and some boys too, but especially focused on girls, to come and learn about satellite manufacturing, deep space, and have a fun-filled day promoting STEM studies for those girls. Arizona shines as a player in the commerce space sector, with companies headquartered from Tempe to Tucson, from the East Valley and throughout the West Valley too, involved in satellite manufacturing, deep space navigation, mobile data, and so much more. That shouldn't be a surprise given the emphasis on space or our outstanding educational institutions. Many Arizonans, however, don't know that ASU graduates future leaders in space through its School of Earth and Space Exploration and through Thunderbird's innovative Young Space Leadership Program. But of course, the University of Arizona is also an extraordinary leader in optics, in astrophysics, and in leading in space for a long time. I'm especially proud that ASU is the alma mater of the new director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, my friend and many of yours, Dr. Lori Leshin at Caltech. I also know from my time as Secretary of the Air Force that Arizona is home to aerospace assets that are critical to our national defense. It's been true since World War II that when the world's freedom depended upon it, the United States paved over a great portion of this Arizona desert to train pilots, because our cloudless blue skies allow pilots from 19 countries to train here and learn to fly much faster than they would have in the clouded skies of many of their home countries. All of this has led to aviation and an aviation and aerospace heritage in Arizona that is second to none. The Apache helicopter is manufactured in Mesa, Arizona, and one of our Air Force's greatest assets is the Barry Goldwater Range, where we train our fighter and bomber pilots. As you've heard in this morning's session, our state will continue to play a leadership role in securing our assets in space for a long time to come. But when it comes to securing space, we face a unique challenge. While most Americans use space before their first cup of coffee, as I mentioned, they don't know they're using it. They know when they use electricity because they see the power lines, they get a bill from the power company, but not so in space. Space is still seen largely as a setting for science fiction movies and for perhaps a destination for a select few heroic astronauts, but Americans and even some members of Congress do not recognize its omnipresence in our lives, nor its fragility. But as you would know, our satellites and other space assets are vulnerable. They can be jammed or spoofed, and they can be attacked. History teaches us another lesson about this valuable new domain. In addition to bringing commerce, it also brings challenges. Not long after the Wright Flyer lifted off the grass at Kitty Hawk, the sky became pivotal to reconnaissance and military success. After the proven role of aviation in World War II in 1947, America created the United States Air Force. It was the first time since George Washington was president that America established a new military service. The second time came in 2019, when, in a rare bipartisan move, Congress passed a bill which the president signed mandating the creation of a U.S. Space Force. As Secretary of the Air Force, I was charged with implementing that mandate. The Secretary of the Air Force now organizes, trains, and equips two distinct services, the Air Force and the Space Force. The structure resembles the Department of the Navy, where the Secretary of the Navy oversees the Navy and the Marine Corps. In establishing the U.S. Space Force, Congress and the President acknowledged the urgent importance of space to our national security. It's important as a medium through which citizens achieve their everyday functions. It's also used as a tool by which all military branches of the United States and our allies that they use for space, for their functions. And as a sad reality, it is also a warfighting domain that we have to prepare for. With the Space Force, we endeavored to build a branch that, like space exploration itself, is innovative in every way. For one, it's inherently talent-heavy and science-driven. It's not defined by head count. It's less about human physical power, such as upper body strength, and more about brain power, engineering, and technology. and agility. The importance of this space reconnaissance has already been proven many times. One example with which you may be familiar was in the year 2020. You may recall that the United States took out the Iranian military commander and terrorist leader, Qasem Soleimani. Less than a week later, a space officer, half a world away at a computer console in Colorado, observed a telltale signature of a ballistic launch from Iran. Observed it, calculated the trajectory, and notified her superiors, who immediately alerted the Americans at the targeted base in Iraq. The base sounded alarms and everyone immediately took cover. The Iranians' retaliatory ballistic missile strike on American men and women based in Iraq, the largest ballistic missile attack ever against Americans, caused billions of dollars in damage to the base. Yet you may not have ever heard of it or remember it because not a single life was lost thanks to an attentive space officer. Much damage was done, but no lives lost. The Space Force is carrying this work forward every day, defending our assets and our people. It's no wonder that the Space Force budget has nearly doubled since it was established in 2019. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan expressed his vision about space. He said, "Mankind's journey into space, like every great voyage of discovery, will become part of our unending journey of liberation. In the limitless reaches of space, we will find liberation from tyranny, from scarcity, from ignorance, and from war. This is our mission. This is our destiny." Later, President Reagan leveled a crucial caveat, but only if, in space, we preserve our basic values. We must apply our belief in human rights, in democracy, in peace. These must drive the space era of exploration and discovery. For that to happen, we must continue to lead with courage, character, and wisdom. That will require the dedication of not just our leaders in Washington, not just our Space Force officers, but American innovators, thinkers, voters, and students across the country, and especially here in Arizona. We must, as the motto of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory states, we must dare mighty things. This means tackling the biggest challenges with creativity and gusto. I'm going to leave a few moments for us to take questions, so let me close with a message from my late friend David McCullough, who said the best way to know where the country is going is to know where it has been. We, he said, were carved by pioneers out of the wilderness of the West, and now we've helped send new pioneers to the moon and back, and into the atomic age, the computer age, and now beyond, to new adventure and to new discoveries in space. I'm pleased to be here with you and to have a chance to share these thoughts and to talk with those of you, the people who are making it all happen. I thank you very much, and I'm happy to take your questions.
So much for all of that. A lot of things I didn't know, so you educated me today. Any questions? I have the mic. Over here.
Thanks, Ambassador. Stephen Fleming, University of Arizona. Question based on your Air Force, Secretary of Air Force experience. At some point, the Space Force will want to stop sharing their professional military education with the Air Force, and they will need to set up. They will need to set up mid-career professional training for officers. That should be in Arizona. How do we make that happen?
I like the way you think. You know, that I think You know, it's interesting, when you look at Colorado Springs and how it happened, that when the news came out that there would be an academy for the Air Force, a bunch of business leaders got together and said, we want that. And they put together a strategy, they built a strategy, they built the team, they built the ideas of why they were the best situated. And I think that we ought to go about the same thing. I am confident it would be dramatically competed. And I am confident also that Colorado Springs would want to be among them. And we've seen their competition, their competitive juices flowing. They've got they're exercising them on the Space Command topic. But I would think that it would be one of those things that Arizona ought to demonstrate its ability to attract. For the immediate future, I anticipate that the Space Force will look to not build its own as much as share services. You'll note that most of the base security, chaplaincy, band, there are a lot of things that most military services have that the Space Force doesn't, and for headcount reasons may not be a part of the Space Force's immediate or even midterm future. But I think that we would like to see Arizona play a stronger leadership role, and that an event like this can really be the spawning territory for that to happen. Good question, thank you.
You already answered my question, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Extremely efficient.
As long as the mic's in the neighborhood.
So my name is Eric Miller from a local small company called PADT. I've been asking this question of people in your kind of position for 25 years, and the issue that we in the industry always face is, we talked about it again today, is changing programs, right? New administration comes in, direction totally changes, and billions of dollars are wasted. Is there a solution to that?
If there is, it's a political one. And that's fickle territory, as you would well know from your 25 years of asking the question. You know, I think that increasingly programs are not 1 and 2 year, or even a 2-year term, or a 6-year term, or a 4-year term in the executive offices. You can't fit this kind of long-range work into those. So it is important for us to have longer range. And we also, even more significant to me, it seems, is the perennial challenge of continuing resolutions, where, as those of you who deal with Congress know, that during the time of a continuing resolution, you can continue doing any program you've been doing, but you can't start anything new. Well, that works fine if you're producing something that doesn't change. But if you're producing something that is technologically driven and that has to be moving all the time, it's devastating for technological advancement, and therefore it's devastating for space. And so when you have a 4-month continuing resolution, you are 1/3 of a year behind, and just allowing our competitors 1/3 of a year, and you do that 3 times, you're a year behind. And a year in today's development is devastating. So we cannot claim to be serious about advancing in technology and leading the world in technology when we intentionally, knowingly hogtie ourselves with the inability to advance new policies and new technologies during the tenure of a continuing resolution. It may have worked as a contrivance to force Congress's hand, but it has become a routine that's a devastating one. So we'll fix a CR. I'll work on the CR thing, or you work on the CR thing, and then I'll work on that longer term contracts and projects. Yes.
Ambassador, Carolyn Bell with Astroscale US. So you noted both the value that space provides to us on a regular basis, but also, as you said, a sad reality that space has become a warfighting domain. What are the steps that you think the United States, and specifically the Space Force, can take to make sure that we don't intensify the reality of that being a warfighting domain, so we continue to get those benefits?
Yeah, well, our first step is to be in a position to be something other than a victim in space. If we are defenseless, so we launched the GPS system, and my predecessor said, I think wisely, that it's as though we built glass houses before we thought about stones. And while we were exclusively providing GPS services, the rest of the world was counting on it too, and if they heard our GPS system, they were hurting their own ability. When you think about it, in the history of mankind, what has been as influential, has changed people's behavior as quickly as the GPS system has, as dramatically or as quickly as the GPS system has? I think nothing. The wheel, the fire, none of those have been as influential in our capability. My husband would say the computer chip would be in the running, but that's the Intel talking. But what the GPS system has done is most remarkable in that it took a lot of brain power to get it established, but once it's launched, it's 8 people sitting in a base in Colorado looking at consoles. It's a total working capacity of 40 people on shifts that run that whole system for the world, and it's free to the world. It's a remarkable thing, but it's vulnerable. And it can be, as I indicated, it can be spoofed, it can be jammed, it can be captured, it can be disabled. And we have historically not had any defense to that. Our best defense, it may be proliferation, and to have it depend on fewer and more proliferated systems, but we also need to be able to strike back. And to be a victim and have no ability to retaliate is not a position for the United States to be in. Deterrence often is best when you have a capability of being something more than a victim, and that's what our Space Force will be able to do. We would certainly rather it not be used, but we know, and as we see in Ukraine, it's amazing how people can conjure propaganda to defend an action that is entirely malevolent and belligerence. And so in space, the same thing would be a challenge. So we need to be able to strike back, and I think that will be and disable retaliatorily, and that's what we'll be able to do. Yes. Yeah, I think thus far NASA is our provider of human space flight, but there will be some things that have to be, I would imagine. Robotics can do a lot, and we are doing a lot more unmanned in what has been crewed activities in air breathing domain. In space, we aren't as dependent upon crewed space, but I would envision that we will have we don't say manned anymore, we say crewed, but it also sounds like I'm saying C-R-U-D-E, and that's not my intention. But so we will be using crews in space, I would anticipate at some point in the future, and that will be a part of a defense mission. And I think you have an opportunity to ask that question directly of the Space Force this evening. Justin will be there this evening and speak to it directly. Other questions? Or
We could take one more.
we do? Good.
So, how does the international allies play the role of what we do in space?
Yeah, we are very interactive in space. We train, we work together, we collaborate, we work often with our allies, and different allies, different levels of cooperation. You know, we have had an interesting question of what do we talk about? What do we reveal and what do we conceal? And I didn't go into the job with a clear understanding of that, and it seems maybe we reveal a little less than we could, and that it would be in our better interest to reveal a bit more of what some of our capabilities are. But a very simple way of thinking about what do you reveal and what do you conceal is that you reveal to deter and you conceal to win. So you disclose more to have people say, you don't want to pick on us because we've got capabilities. But then we don't probably tell all our capabilities because we don't want to have preparation on the other side for everything we can do. So I think it's a credible way to devise our disclosures, and among the disclosures, we work closely, carefully, and warmly with our allies. And we at the same time would have some things we would hope are not revealed even to our close friends. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. So next, President Crow wasn't able to join us today, but he did record some remarks. So I'm going to introduce him, although probably many people here already know President Crow. But he's an educator, knowledge, enterprise architect, science and technology policy scholar, and higher ed leader. He became the 16th president of ASU in July of 2002 and has spearheaded ASU's rapid and groundbreaking transformative evolution into one of America's best public metropolitan research universities. As a model new American university, ASU simultaneously demonstrates comprehensive excellence, inclusivity representative of the ethnic and socioeconomic diversity of the United States, and consequential societal impact. President Crow has been a huge supporter of all things space at ASU, and so he sends his regrets, but here are his supportive remarks for our event today.
Hi, Michael Crow here, president of Arizona State University. Sorry I can't be there with you. I've got drug off somewhere. I can't be there to say hello to Barbara, who I know you just heard from. Thank you, Barbara, for keynoting and getting the group all fired up. Arizona State University, just let me say a little bit about that relative to what you guys are doing here at the Arizona Space Summit. So it's very important to you all as companies, and we're looking forward to, and others, and we're looking forward to every way possible that we can work with you. We decided a few years ago to rethink the idea of a university. We decided to change it bottom up and top down every possible way. We changed our culture, we changed our design. We did everything possible to decide how we could be a university that would be unbelievably entrepreneurial, unbelievably creative, unbelievably research intensive, and at the same time, intensely egalitarian, admitting students from every family background, every financial background, every single one of them that met our admission requirements, which we think are the historic admission requirements necessary to complete a university education. What's that meant along the way, and this will then feed into why we think that it's such an important opportunity for us to find a way to work with all of you, is that, for instance, in engineering, we blew up all of our engineering departments a few years ago. We reconceptualized the structure of engineering around grand challenges, things like some of the things that you all are working towards, sustainability, global outcomes, new kinds of ways that we structure our lives, and so forth and so on. We enabled ourselves with a new academic culture. We designed a new technological add-on or clip-on to the institution, which helped eliminate math as a barrier by providing robotic ways and intensively, computationally intensive ways to enhance math learning and chemistry learning and so forth and so on. And we went from 6,000 engineering students with less than a 70% retention rate after the first year to 30,000 engineering students, with those that are undergraduates now experiencing more than a 90% retention rate. 22,000 engineering students on campus and 8,000 engineering students online in the first fully accredited engineering degrees by ABET that are out there. What that means then is that we understand how to scale STEM, we understand how to diversify STEM, we understand how to produce from our outstanding research grade faculty high quality engineers, high quality scientists, high quality dreamers, high quality architects, high quality construction managers, high quality conceptualizers, high quality whatever you need, because we've taken a different approach in the design of the institution. So I'm really sorry that I can't be there with you, but you all are convening, thinking